This is uncharted territory. It adds even more uncertainty to what is already shaping up to be the most uncertain election season in modern history. Joining me now is the top election official in Colorado, Jena Griswold. She's the Secretary of State of Colorado. She's the chair of the Democratic Association of Secretaries of State. She's a champion for democracy and a good friend of our show. Secretary Griswold, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We had a conversation about this very early on, and you, like every Secretary of State in the country who is responsible for running elections in your state, had the same response, and it was that it was not likely going to end with you. In other words, while one could on paper say that you are the final arbiter of these things, you knew full well that this would go before the courts, and it has now gone before the courts 2 times in Colorado. It's gone before the courts in New Mexico, and it will go before other courts as well. Where do you stand right now on what has been decided? How do you move forward in Colorado based on what has happened?
Well, 2 courts have looked at whether Donald Trump is disqualified and whether he engaged in insurrection. Both have determined at this point that he did engage in insurrection. And then the Colorado Supreme Court, of course, has disqualified him from the Colorado ballot. And Allie, I agree with the Colorado Supreme Court. I've said, for quite some time that Donald Trump has incited the insurrection, and there shouldn't be a loophole for inciting insurrection for the presidency. So just like you, we'll wait to see if an appeal is filed to the United States Supreme Court and whether the United States Supreme Court decides to intervene in the case.
I want to ask you about something. Judge Luttig and Lawrence Tribe have been at the forefront of this discussion for a long time. They always felt that the Colorado case was the one that was probably the most important. Judge Luttig was on the show yesterday taking exception to some of the discussion that's going on in the United States to say this would be unsatisfying. To have Donald Trump disqualified for this legal matter, the interpretation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, would be less satisfying than to have Donald Trump on the ballot and have people not elect him as president. Judge Luttig said those are separate and unrelated arguments. The legal matter needs to be pursued as a legal matter.
That's right. My job is to follow the law and uphold the Constitution. And when there's big questions about whether something is constitutional or not, it's appropriate to go to the courts. At the end of the day, we are only at this point because Donald Trump tried to disenfranchise Americans across the country when he tried to steal the presidency in 2020. That was not satisfying. He lost that election. And so I think the idea that we move forward and just ignore what happened throughout 2020 and then the attacks on democracy afterwards is also very dangerous. We know that he is a threat to this country. He is a threat to voting rights. He's a threat to the right to choose. He's the threat to the stability of this nation. And the idea that we have an election and he loses and accepts the results if he does lose is not going to happen. We are very likely going to be in a similar situation that we were in 2020.
You said that it's dangerous. You mean that for democracy. But as I mentioned in the introduction, it's specifically dangerous. I only read one of the threats that have been made to the justices of the Colorado Supreme Court. There are many, and some are worse. What is it like? How do you deal with that situation? And what's it like to be you? Because I know you've been hearing from people about this since day one.
It's scary, to tell you the truth. I was a defendant in this case. I did not bring this case. 6 Republican and unaffiliated voters chose to bring the case. And within 3 weeks of it being filed, I had 64 death threats. Since the decision, I've received dozens of death threats. The judges have just been swamped with death threats. We see in reporting. And I'll tell you, it's one of the reasons Donald Trump is a danger to this country. In this country, people win and lose court cases. People win and lose elections. But we have to agree that the system has the outcomes that are correct, that our elections are fair, that justices are going to be looking at the law in Colorado and applying it correctly. And the use of violence to try to intimidate us is unacceptable in a democracy. They're not going to intimidate me. But I'll tell you, it's been a really scary situation that I've been living since 2021. And when you are in these positions, you largely feel abandoned by the federal government and many state government actors, like you're on an island. But we're just going to be pushing forward to make sure that democracy remains intact and that we uphold the Constitution.
Let me ask you about the practicality of your job right now. The reporting has been that you actually have to start dealing with ballots for the Republican primary starting on January 5th. This ruling is stayed until January 4th, presumably to allow Donald Trump and his team to appeal if they choose to do so, and they've indicated they will. What practically happens for you? Do you move ahead on January 5th, or do you? What happens? What do you do?
So we'll have, of course, two presidential primaries in Colorado, the Democratic primary and the Republican primary. And Ali, in your intro, you spotlighted that the Colorado Republican Party is threatening to cancel the primary. I want to make it clear that that is not a legal option for them. We will have a Republican primary in the state of Colorado, just like normal. Coloradans overwhelmingly voted to have presidential primaries, and that's what we're going to do. In terms of the certification date, which is on January 5th, that's the day that I state to the counties the candidates who are officially on the ballot. Just like you, we'll wait and see to whether the Supreme Court takes the case, whether an appeal is filed. But as of now, none of that has happened. And Donald Trump, as of now, is disqualified from the Colorado ballot.
Jena Griswold, I've said it before to you many times. Years ago, I'd never spoken to a Secretary of State at all in the country. I probably couldn't name most of them, and now I've gotten to know so many of you, and thank you, and I appreciate the work that you do in making sure that our elections are safe and that democracy is upheld. We'll continue to stay close to you on this story. Jena Griswold is Colorado's Secretary of State.